Good day. My name is Kingston Ja, and I am presently the president of the National Association of Driving Schools, better known as NADS. I have been the executive for the past 8 years. So basically, I know the ins and outs of driving instructions and the way the ministry operates and things of this sort. However, I'm taking this opportunity now to speak to my fellow instructors and the general public as to me being the president for the past 2 years. Coming tomorrow, we will be having general elections where a new executive will be voted in to preside over the affairs of the National Association of Driving Schools. It was a pleasure serving you, the general public, and also serving the driving instructors, which I had the opportunity to help bring the issues forward, the Ministry of Transport, to represent them in various ways and various manners, and to help bring our organization forward. So I'd like to thank those instructors immensely for helping me, help them, and helping even the executive to move forward. Over the years, we have had several workshops where we educate our instructors as to the new procedures when it comes to driving, view business ethics, and things of that sort. Our instructors got to become certified first aid responders, which was done by the Red Cross, and also they were taught how to use fire extinguishers and things of that sort. It is now mandatory that all driving schools have first aid kits on board and fire extinguishers. So in case of any situation on the road, you could always stop a driving school vehicle to assist you, because they will have those things, and our instructors are trained in that form to assist either in first aid or in case there's a vehicle of fire as a result. So these are one of the few steps we had moving forward during the 2 years I was in office. I would like to thank my executive especially, because without them, I would not be able to move forward, and our association would not be able to move forward in the way that we did. So I'd like to thank my secretary, Stacey Nelson, and my treasurer, Naomi Alexander, especially, and also remembering my other members in Viewfort are also part of the executive that they really assisted as well by coming to many of the meetings we had and things of that sort. So I'd like to thank them as well. I'd like to thank especially the examiners and Ministry of Transport, who have had the Herculean task of conducting practical exams for hundreds of students with 34 schools in the north and another 13 in the south. It is very difficult for just 3 exams to be taken on this task. So we find students will have to wait for an extremely long period of time before they could have a practical exam done. And those examiners, they will come in and they ought to do at least 8 exams a day, but you find they sometimes go up to 16 exams a day. They go way and beyond the call of duty, because they recognize that the students should not be punished because the ministry is not taking on the responsibility as to having enough manpower to have exams executed. So I really must thank them immensely for that, especially Mr. Felix Ford in the South, where many times when he the one responsible for correcting theory exams, and it poses some problems for him, because in the South, he's unable to have those results of those exams entered in to the system. Reason being, there is only, up north, there is a computer where he could use, but down south, he doesn't have a computer. So for him to be able to put in those entries, he'll have to wait until a clerk is not using their computer and then try to use it. Sometimes the clerk will be using a computer the whole day, so he now has to leave Castries and go up Viewfort to put in those entries. Now, what it causes for the students is a delay in that sense receiving the results for the exam. So people in Viewfort sometimes do an exam and they have to wait probably 2, 3, 4 weeks before they get the result of that exam. But he's trying his best, and so I'd like to thank him immensely for that. I'm saying this as well, so the powers that be, for example, the permanent secretary, Mr. Claudius Francis, and his deputy as well, and even the minister could see it necessary to at least have one computer for Mr. Ford in the South where he could do his work properly. We have to give the people working in the Ministry of Transport the tools to the job that they have to do. I also like it from Mr. Eugene George, who's another examiner who has revolutionized the practical exams for motorcycles on island. At present, what he is now following is the same procedure for practical exams as done in UK. So right now is the same standard as in the UK, and he has really brought the motorcycle sector forward. As many people nowadays can get the license for motorcycle, and they are being taught the correct way, and they have been examined to ensure that they meet the minimum standard to be allowed on the road as a motorcyclist. First but not last, in the examiner I from Mr. Martin Joseph, who comes in at 7 a.m. in the morning just to ensure that students get a chance to do a practical exam. Since all students need a chance to do a practical exam, but not enough examiners. So he comes in at 7 a.m. and goes way and beyond his quota, which is 8. And then sometimes 16 exams on that day, just to see that person get to the practical exam. So I like to thank him for that, especially at this point in time in his life, where he is due for retirement. And he gets his contract renewed every 3 or sometimes every 4, sometimes every 6 months. This is really not a good thing for our association and not a good thing for the country as a whole. Because when this happens, what it does is, once his contract expires, he has to stop working. When he stops working, he only have 2 examiners. And then the backlog continues and continues. Then his contract will be renewed again for probably another 3 months. And when it expires, you have to wait another 2 weeks again so you could come back to work, creating a backlog. And this really hampers persons' ability to move forward in their lives. Some will just need to get the driver's license to get a promotion or something like get a job. Some will need to get the driver's license to move to another country because the job they go get in another country, they require a driver's license. They figure it's better to get it in St. Lucia, the place of their birth. And that is being hampered, that is being held back, and some people sometimes never end up getting the license as a result of this. So I'd like to employ the Minister of Transport, Mr. Guy Joseph, to have the ball rolling to employ another examiner to replace Mr. Martin Joseph, who has reached retirement age. I have spoken to the minister, and he says that he believes that based on how the law is written as to the requirements for someone to be a driving examiner, he believes it should be a wider field. So as it stands now, the law is that the other requirements to be a driving examiner is that you must have a DVSA licensed instructor, which is basically a certification from England saying that that person is qualified to be a driving instructor or an examiner. Or likewise certification, that's what the stipulation says, or likewise certification. So in America, it will be a certification from the DMV, which is to say that you're certified to be an instructor and an examiner. The minister believes that this is too much to ask for and not enough for our people are certified in that aspect. However, in that same legislation, it says lower down that if the person applying for the post does not have those certifications, but the person have been a driving instructor for at least 5 years, then that person can apply to be a driving examiner at least 5 years and hold a driver's license for every field. So basically a driver's license for every level of driving. We have many instructors who meet this requirement. Mr. Eugene George and Mr. Felix Ford are such examiners. And we believe that this is enough because being a licensed instructor in St. Lucia for at least 5 years, you then get to understand the terminology as to how driving examiners should speak, the rules and regulations as to how driving examiners should conduct themselves, and things of that sort. So we believe that we have competent people who could be driving examiners, but as of right now, they are not being considered because the minister believes that he should change that legislation so he could have a wider field to choose, or so then they could have a wider field to choose from. I don't believe this is the way we should go. I must commend the clerks at the Ministry of Infrastructure. At the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Driving School Association have an assigned window where you could go to have our documents processed and things of that sort. And all other business concerning driving schools. And this is so because when one driving school instructor goes on the general line, sometimes you may have 12, 14 permits to process, probably sometimes 12 theory exams to pay for and things of that sort, and that alone will hold the line for probably 45 minutes to an hour, which would then frustrate members of the general public being on that same line with us. So designated line was made, or counter was made where the instructors can go to. And Ms. Donna Lawrenson is the one facilitating that counter at present. However, in recent times, we have had a serious problem where Ms. Lawrenson has been removed from the driving school instructors counter and been placed on the general counter. Reason being is the ministry doesn't have sufficient clerks to carry the task of servicing the public. And we believe that this is a clear sign that the powers that be do not take servicing the public seriously. Because if they do, they would have more clerks to service those counters. At present, there is only one senior clerk, which is Donna Lawrenson, and 2 new clerks who are basically right now apprentices. They're just learning the job. There's another senior clerk, but she's on vacation. So every now and then, you'll have to find Ms. Lawrenson moving from the Driving School Association counter and going to the general counter, which then causes our permits to be laid back. So which then causes students who are waiting for a free result to now wait for an extra 2, 3, or even sometimes 4 weeks to get the result for a free exam, which then causes the permit to expire, which then causes that student to have to pay more money, which causes that student medical to expire. And medical costs anywhere between $100 to $150 for that student. We must really take our people into consideration and service them properly. Just a couple months ago, Ms. Lawrenson again, her computer had an issue. And it took the ministry 4 months to get another computer for her. 4 months of not being able to put in entries into that system. 4 months of people having to wait for results. She then had to try and get other computers, other clerks using sometimes to help assist. I believe we could do better than that. We have a permanent secretary in the name of Mr. Claudius Francis, and we have a deputy as well in the Ministry of Transport, and we have a Minister of Transport. Yet, we have one printer to print cards at the Ministry of Transport. One printer to print cards at the Ministry of Transport. That printer has to print probably something about 100 something cards a day. That printer is overworked. We check online for the exact printer they have, and it costs at least $1,500 for that printer. $1,500. There are even more expensive ones for probably $12,000 US. But the ones we're using now is $1,500 US. We could afford to get at least one printer. An extra printer, so the Ministry of Transport doesn't have to, every time the printer breaks down, then stop printing cards for 2, 3, 4 weeks until the pad comes down, so you can repair that printer. I just believe that this is gross negligence on the powers that be. And I know for certain that the chief transport officers write and they put in the applications for new printers, but it is being ignored. For some reason, the powers that be do not see it necessary to have the public service better than what we're getting right now. I think they should step up. I would like now to thank two Chief Transport Officers, and firstly it will be Miss Lynetta Joseph. She's the former Chief Transport Officer, and she always had time for the Driving School Association. Always made time to speak to us, to allow us to air our concerns. She had meetings and consultations with us at all times, and every step of the way she guided us along. I think that's a great example as what public servants ought to do. And I'll say the same for Ms. Gibbs. For us to move forward in this country, we have to have consultation. Consultation, consultation, consultation. Consultation, and we work together because we're all working for the same goal, to have betterment for our country. Next week Saturday going to be National Day. We should all strive to have a better nation. I'm saying this to say, although the persons in the public service are working very, very hard, the clerks are working very, very hard. Ms. Donna Lawrence and some other clerks sometimes leave the Ministry of Transport all 5:30 p.m. They come to work at 8, they leave at 5:30 p.m. Sometimes they work through the lunch hour. Most people coming in the queue do not realize that, but sometimes they work for the lunch hour just to service the public. But they need assistance, they need help. They can't just keep on doing this all the time. Those persons higher up, the permanent secretary, ensure that people working in your ministry get the tools required to do the job. Give the people working under you all the tools required to do the job. And if the problem is that you as permanent secretary cannot do the job, or you need assistance from the minister and not getting that assistance, then you should let the general public know that. Because something has to be done. Over the last week, members of my organization have been quarreling. They have begged me to do something, so the process at the Ministry of Transport could move faster. Over the past week, we have been going to the Ministry of Transport trying to prepare permits for students so they could begin to learn to drive. And this takes weeks because they do not have sufficient clerks. Only 3 clerks working. Don't have sufficient clerks. We can do way better than that. I'm employing the minister and the permanent secretary to do what needs to be done. This is not the way we ought to be operating. Those are not problems that are unsurmountable. We can take care of those things. We need to put our people first in all that we do. Anyway, it was a pleasure serving you all, you the public, because I also represented St. Lucia on the whole. So I'd like to thank you, the public. And I'd also like to thank the media for always allowing us to be able to air our views on matters relating to driving instructions and road safety. Always looking for our input in those areas. So I'd like to thank the members of the media immensely for this. Thank you very much.